So, Nicolas, I know a little bit about you, but I would really like it if you could tell people who are watching this video a little bit about 3 Million and some of the work that you're doing. What's the purpose of the organisation?
Well, in 2016, there was a referendum on Brexit. So you probably heard of Brexit. Basically, the UK wanting to leave the European Union. And after the referendum, people like me, who were Europeans and French, felt that we've got a problem. Because of Brexit, we're going to lose the right to live in the UK. I've lived there for 22 years. I've got a British daughter, but that would not guarantee my right to continue my life in the country that I chose to become my home. So I started a campaign to influence governments and engage grassroots, and it's called the 3 Million. We've had quite a lot of success in terms of speaking to Brussels, the European Union, to speaking in the British government in Whitehall, and to have a lot of media coverage. And so far, we are the main stakeholder representing citizens, representing people in the negotiation process.
Oh, that's great. My next question was actually going to be about how you work with government. I know from talking to you that you've been meeting with quite a lot of elected officials. Do you also work with government staff? And what would you say the relationship that you have with government is? How does it work? How are you participating in the democratic system over there, since this decision?
Well, I think it's actually really important to distinguish the elected officials, the politicians in charge, the ministers and the prime minister, the government, that people think that's the government, and the civil servants. Because when we talk about the government, if you work for the government as a civil servant, you're usually quite proud of what you're doing. Why shouldn't you be proud? It's a really amazing career to serve your country as a civil servant. So as a campaigner, at first, we engage with civil servants because they're the people that are put across to us. But we wanted to send our messages to the politicians. So we had to adjust what we were saying, because when we criticize the government for not acting on our campaign or our ask, I think the civil servant took that personally in some ways, thinking, well, we're trying to work with you guys, don't criticize us. So we changed the way we targeted our messages by actually praising the civil service and then blaming the politicians for inactions. And that really, really worked, I think, because now we got really, really good relationship with top civil servants in the British government, and with the politicians. As a result, they're a bit more careful because they can see that we are the only guys they can talk to.
That's a really important point. I mean, one of the fundamentals of the democratic system, the representative democratic system, is that there's a separation of powers. So it's great to see that you've made that distinction. Yeah. So I'm sure you've heard of direct democracy. Direct democracy means people get to vote on everything in its very classical sense. And referendum is an example of direct democracy. What are your thoughts about referendum now that you've experienced the impact of something like this? And you're obviously seeing the impact of this on individuals, families, neighborhoods, communities, businesses, and of course the government, both the bureaucracy and the elected officials. What are your thoughts about the role of referendum and direct democracy within the democratic system as it stands at the moment?
It's been an interesting one, really, in the UK, because the regime is a parliamentary regime. And a lot of people in Europe, they've had to experience dictatorship in the 20th century. So they looked at the UK as a regime that was really democratic in many ways. No, not without flaws, because there's no perfect democracy, but a good democracy. What this referendum on Brexit has done is that on there is a lot of social issues in the countries because the financial crisis has created a lot of social inequalities. Austerity has been really quite harsh. So we've asked, they've asked one question about Europe. Actually, they made a whole campaign about immigration, and then but the solution is actually completely different to what's being asked. So there's some sort of manipulation of the agenda to suit some certain ideologies. And I think direct democracy, I think it can be great if you guys say, what service provider the local authorities got to use for water provision, or very practical things. But when it's such a big decision, then it's got to be used in a very careful way. And I think what was missing in May, is that there was no impact assessment of the decision. So it was put across to voters in a way that, okay, yes or no, but people were not told exactly what would be the effect. And as a result, people didn't vote fully knowing what would happen.
Do you think that people knew what they were voting for when they had the yes or no option? Do you think people understood the potential impact of their yes vote or their no vote?
No, I think some people might, but it would go both ways, because at the end of the day, it's very emotional. And I think that if people have to learn something from that vote, is that if you're going to put decision to the vote like this, you've got to understand that the decision will be made on an emotional basis, not on a fact basis. And this is what we've done as a campaign as well. So I've got a badge here. So if you can see it, it's called "I am not a bargaining chip." People really felt that they've become bargaining chips. It resonated with them. And then as a frame, our opponents couldn't fight it either, because we are people. You can't be against people. I think unfortunately the referendum was fought on an emotional basis, and I'd warn people that you've got to understand this to be able to really campaign effectively. If you are in the middle of a direct democracy exercise like the referendum, where you would disagree with the outcome, don't fight it on facts, fight it on emotion.
That's some good advice there, Nicolas, and some really interesting insights into direct democracy, the impacts of decisions, and also how to potentially work with government. I think you've answered my question about whether or not people might vote the same way. Let's just finish up there. Do you think that people would vote the same way now if they had the referendum again? You do.
Absolutely no doubt. The focus will go back on immigration and taking back this control, and it'd be exactly the same outcome.
Well, I'm sure, like many people in Australia, I'll be watching what's going on over there towards the end of this year and the start of next year with the impending deadline in March. I wish you and everybody that you represent as smooth an impact as possible, I guess, throughout this time, and I hope you get some certainty about what comes next for all of you.
Thank you very much, and enjoy the day. Have a great conference.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. It's always great to talk to you. Take care.